afternoon. In the fight against coronavirus, Jacksonpal Pharmaceuticals brings to you Lycurate soft gels to provide the required defense to boost the immunity. Strike against pathogens with Doxipal DRL, doxycycline 100 mg capsules, and Narical tablets of calcium citrate malate with vitamin D3 and folic acid. I am Dr. Vipin Tyagi along with my teammates Dr. Deepika Chabda and Mr. Amit Saxena. We welcome and thank the office bearers of Delhi Medical Association for organizing weekly academic program every Saturday with Jackson Park. In this series is today's panel discussion on women health and disease with esteemed faculty present with us today. Welcome to all the attendees. Please post your queries by text in the Q&A box to be answered at the end. Please note this webinar is streaming on Facebook Live. The recording will remain on Jackson Pal's YouTube channel for reference and promotion. I will now request DMA President Dr. G.S. Grewal to kindly initiate the session.
Thank you, Vipin. Namaskar to all of you. A very, very good afternoon and a warm welcome for this Saturday afternoon academic update by Delhi Medical Association. It's a pleasure for me to, along with the President-elect of Delhi Medical Association, Dr. Ashwini Dalmia, the Vice Presidents, Dr. Neelam Lekhi, Dr. Girish Kelly, our State Secretary, Dr. Ajay Gambhir, and our Finance Secretary, Dr. Alok Bhandari. And we all join in welcoming a very, very distinguished faculty and a number of attendees from all over Delhi Medical Association. Ladies and gentlemen, today afternoon is a very special day because on the topic of women health and disease, nobody here can imagine or think of a better faculty. We have distinguished academicians, social activists, and researchers as part of our faculty. I will now invite Professor Sunita Mittal. I will be inviting them in this order, which I assure you is of no preference of mine, but is just taking the flow of the topics. Professor Sunita Mittal, former head of Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and now the senior consultant at Fortis Gurgaon. She will be speaking on an overview of women health and disease. And no better person than her who has taken all extremes of women health and has addressed them and introduced so many solutions for women health. Ma'am, it's a pleasure on behalf of Delhi Medical Association to welcome you. Welcome, Professor Sunita Mittal.
I must compliment DMA for a very, very interesting and innovative academic update, which they've started as a series on every Saturday. I'm sure it is going to be of immense benefit to everyone. I would also like to express my gratitude to all and all the office bearers of DMA who have invited me to join you. So, topic as already introduced by Bobby is women health and disease. A very interesting topic. Women health has always been important. He has asked me to give an overview of women health with respect to challenges due to social circumstances, what is happening with working women, the longevity, the increasing lifespan of women, and what are the technical advances occurring. And then, of course, you have several experts who would be talking about advances in various fields. First important thing which comes in mind when we talk of women's health is why women do not seek health care. In India, we've had many experiences, and we always find one is, of course, most women are very tolerant. There is a culture of silence. They keep suffering and they do not come out with their problems. That's a big social issue with us, though declining now. But still, there is a low priority given to women's health because of poor resources and because of poverty. Next, please. The scenario, of course, is changing now. we do have increasing number of women entering the workforce in recent years. We now know that almost half of this labor workforce is being accounted for by women. Next, please. And of course, the modern women which are there, they have, of course, they're working, they're more independent, they have individually defined lifestyles, they're more powered, they have more access to information. So scenario is changing. So we don't see any longer, we used to see cases coming in late stage, 3 or 4 of malignancies. They do come earlier now. It is very important with changing scenario to consider women on individual level, but the problem of increasing population and poor resources still continues to bug India. Attitudes and roles also have changed in modern women. They're more educated, they've career goals, their relationships, they're more aware of family planning also, and more aware because of all the information access they have due to internet, social media. In fact, I'm sure Dr. Shadajan will agree with me, when we are conducting the OPD, people are more knowledgeable sometimes. They've read everything about it on Google. There are also changing needs in healthcare. They like to take healthcare provider more as a partner relationship. Their active involvement is there for their individuals, please. With all this changing scenario also, this was from Times of India, where they are still saying women get left behind. This is statistics of corona vaccination, 1,000 versus 854 women, which is even less than the sex ratio. So women are still lagging behind, and especially women who are in remote areas and tribal areas. Of course, we know it is difficult to vaccinate in villages, but still they're being left behind. Second issue important is aging population. In fact, aging population has 3 times increase in last 3 decades. Total global population may reach 9.3 billion by 2050. That is a projected population. We do have improved healthcare and technology, which has reduced the death rate significantly. So again, increasing the aging population, and aging average lifespan is gradually increasing. Next, please. Yeah. Now look at the global age distribution pyramid. Not only longevity is increasing, if you look at it carefully, you will find that in the top brackets, there are more women than men. So more important for aging women to have healthcare. Next. And here is the life expectancy, which was in 70s for women was about 36 years, now has gone up to 69.6 years. And overall, definitely, women have a higher longevity than men. This is the death rate. You can see it's declining, nothing. What is happening in women health? Our priorities, as I said, are changing because of social changes, because of longevity and all. Earlier, in 60s, 70s, the main crux of women healthcare was focused only on safe motherhood, and of course, linked with that, family planning services, in basic immunization or safe abortion. Nowadays, in women healthcare, emphasis is more on preventing many problems, on adolescent health, in infertility management as well as prevention, and of course, many gynecological conditions which are related to longevity and menopausal status have been added to the armamentarium. Healthcare facilities are getting specialized to include home health care, hospice care, geriatric care, and last but not the least, telemedicine. Of course, in Corona era, now with lockdowns, this is probably the norm that most consultations are being done. But overall, also, it is gradually increasing. At the moment, we emphasize more on promoting wellness of the whole individual, which may be physical, emotional, social, mental, intellectual, spiritual. So focus is more, even in women's health, is on holistic health. Next. There are definitely newer trends in healthcare. There is explosive development of technology which has come to our health in our field also in many areas, ultrasound, cancer, cameras. Next, please. But we must not forget all these technologies are, so as I said, the trends are on wellness and preventive medicine, linking diet, exercise, and all to good health. Healthcare wellness centers are coming up, complementary therapies are coming up, employees' health packages are there so that they can remain healthy, and women who are in employment do take benefit of them. Disease screenings are being done. Also, there is now more emphasis on ambulatory and outpatient surgery. Most of the cases are being done on daycare basis, same-day discharge. Even post-hysterectomy women who used to stay in ward for 7 to 10 days usually leave by third day morning. There are new medications, more research, more technology and all. And with all this, even overall cost of procedure has reduced, definitely. Next, please. So modern women's healthcare is basically a comprehensive healthcare, compassionate care, a cutting edge care. All three should be there as a part of women's healthcare. Next, future of healthcare now. What is it likely to be? Two areas where maximum advance has occurred is digital technology, including robotics, even artificial intelligence, other things and all, and genetics, cloning, stem cells, designer babies, even vaccines with all this genetic technology. Next, please. There is a shift in values. It is realized now that human being is more than just a complex machine. We also need to emphasize quality of life, not just disease care. So there it comes health. Emphasis on the unique value of every person, be it men, women, children. Next. So with this shift in technology, advances and all, whenever we talk of any healthcare technology, we must never forget these 5 A's, which should always be tried to fulfill. It should be appropriate for disease we are trying to do. It should be acceptable to whom we are providing that healthcare service. It should be available. It should be accessible. Not that many people can't reach it, and affordable. If they're not able to afford, any good technology becomes useless. Next, please. We must emphasize every person deserves the chance to live a healthy, productive life. And in that era, women's health is very, very important, because if mother is healthy, a woman is healthy in the house, the whole household is going to be healthier. With this, I once again thank organizers, and now you will hear specific topics from the experts as to what newer trends are coming in women's health. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sunita Mittal. What was a wonderful compilation of the overview. And I think hamari ras mil gayi thi, because you just expressed what we wanted to hear from you. And that is professorial, I think. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to the specifics. And having heard the challenges of the women health and disease, now we have identified few specific. It's very difficult to cover the entire women and health and disease, but the few specifics that we want to highlight today. The first one comes, there was a big challenge during COVID of pregnancy and how ladies were coping with that. And we have with us Dr. Meenakshi Ahuja, the ever ebullient, smiling. I get confused whether the baby is smiling first or the gynecologist smiled first with all her delivery photographs. It's always a pleasure to hear Meenakshi, and she's going to be speaking on pregnancy, COVID and pregnancy, what her challenges.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grewal, for having me here. DMA is, of course, something which is close to all of our hearts, and it feels very nice to be in the midst of all our friends and colleagues from other specialities also. And what I will be sharing today is probably my experiences and the changes I've seen in pregnancy and pregnancy management during this last 1.5 years that we've all been through the COVID pandemic. So I think I'll divide the talk in the little things that I have to share. There are no slides, but I'll be dividing it into two. Number one is how women have fared as far as their pregnancy is concerned in the COVID pandemic, and how women have fared during a COVID disease when they were pregnant or looking for pregnancy. So all of us, we all understand that pregnancy is a normal physiological phenomena. And we have seen a lot of changes during the COVID pandemic to even the healthy young women who were involved during the pandemic. So what changes have we seen? The changes as far as pregnancy is seen stems from even unmarried girls to married girls who were or were not looking for a pregnancy. During the first lockdown, when suddenly things went, just stopped in the middle, women did not have access to even contraception. And at that time, we saw a lot of unwanted pregnancies with unmarried girls as well as married women who were not looking for a pregnancy. So that was the first casualty, so I would say, in healthy young women who were not affected by the COVID disease. But yes, we started seeing a lot of unwanted pregnancies. Because healthcare was also not accessible, they took matters in their own hands. And that's why it took abortion pills off the counter, or some did not have access to abortion pills. And they came to us late with later pregnancies where medication to terminate the pregnancy was not possible, or complications of incomplete abortions because they had taken medications on their own. So that was the first thing that we saw, that there were definitely more pregnancies and many of them unwanted also. At the same time, the bright side of this rainbow, there was, the silver lining to this cloud, that we also started seeing a lot of infertile patients, because probably they had stress of COVID but not getting pregnant, who had been taking therapy for a year or two or waiting for their IVF or something, who actually conceived spontaneously. So that's where the second effect we saw in COVID pandemic in women, that women who wanted to get pregnant, who were not getting pregnant earlier because of stress or other reasons, actually because they were spending more time at home, probably eating healthier, probably spending more time with their partners, taking care of their overall health, exercising or doing household work, actually ended up getting pregnant. So that was the bright side of the pandemic that we saw. Then there were a lot of people, because of the pandemic, who stopped planning pregnancy at that time because they didn't think it was right, because we all know that women's jobs and career prospects, or work at home, or unwell relatives were there. So many girls who wanted to get pregnant actually put it on a stop. But women who were probably in the older age group, say over 32, 33 years of age, who could not delay their pregnancies, still continued trying for pregnancy. Many of them did get pregnant, but either because of the stress itself of the disease, we know, we have data which says that stress itself causes abortions. So we did start seeing more miscarriages also at this time. So these are the changes that we saw in the first trimester itself with women during the pandemic without being affected by COVID disease itself. So that was one big change that we saw. Miscarriages were more because probably more elderly primees were getting pregnant. And secondly, because the stress of the pregnancy itself and stress of the disease of COVID, or stress at home because family members were unwell, did cause more mishaps during this time. Now, coming to the COVID disease, we all know that it has affected women in first, second, and third trimester. We are understanding it better, especially after this wave which has happened, because this time definitely we had many more cases. In Delhi itself, there were, we reached almost 30,000 cases in a day, and women were although earlier we thought that women will be spared in the COVID pandemic because of the HLA type and all. But this time there were a lot of women affected and a lot of pregnant women who got affected. So in the first trimester, probably because of the stress or the bleeding, the D-dimers and all getting disordered, or also because of the infection or the high-grade fever, we saw more miscarriages. The second trimester relatively went off easy, but we started seeing more complications in the third trimester. In the third trimester, because of the D-dimers remaining incessantly high, and we know that pregnancy itself is a hypercoagulable state, the D-dimers got much higher. And it is postulated that that could be also one of the reasons why we all did see little more number of stillbirths occurring. So that's one thing that we need to watch out for. Although we know that the D-dimers normally also in pregnancy increase to 4 to 6 times in the second and third trimester. If the D-dimers are high, the woman should be put quickly on anticoagulants like low molecular weight heparin to prevent stillbirths at that time and later even when she recovers. Because we've all seen that D-dimers continue to be high till their delivery also. So these women need to be followed up more carefully. Another thing we saw that at 28, 30, 32 weeks, when a woman would get severe symptoms of COVID and she would be compromised on the lung front, we have seen that these women actually ended up being admitted in the hospital and ICU, and then they had to deliver earlier. Because they were delivering earlier, then we have seen these changes that we are going to have more of preterm births. And that is the morbidity and mortality because of preterm birth is also going to increase. Lactation issues also, for the simple reason that the lactation, because of the stress, because of preterm birth, because of the mother being away from the baby, the lactation issues have also been much more. Mental health has been a very big hit in women, especially in pregnancy, because of people at home being sick or because of their the fear of getting COVID itself, or to pass it to their children when the newborns are there. So I think one very important thing which I would also like to bring up till now is that still we have not got the approval for the vaccination in pregnant women. While lactation, we've already got the approval. So we are all waiting for that also, because every pregnant woman wants to be protected, although we all understand that the masking and all has to go on. But the very fact that we are all waiting, we are hoping that the vaccination should be allowed for pregnant women soon. The FOXI has already taken it up. Other associations have taken it up. And I would request DMA also, as believing that 50% of the population is women, at least 50%, we should be looking at vaccination during pregnancy also.
Great, Meenakshi. Thank you so much. That was lovely, nice, crisp, and to the point, just like your personality. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Meenakshi, for sparing your time. We now have a very dynamic person, and it's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Sharda Jain. I don't think anyone here in Delhi or in North India or in India requires an introduction to this legend, Dr. Sharda Jain, pioneering so many issues for all these years on lady issues. It's a pleasure, ma'am, to have you on our platform. And when you have a person of that stature, I think a simple question, ma'am, what is your last word on HRT as a challenge to menopause women? I'm sorry I missed Dr. Surbhi Singh. So, but let's, Surbhi, may I have your permission to continue with Dr. Sharda Jain?
Yes, sir, of course. Sir.
Thank you, Surbhi. Yes, Dr. Sharda Jain.
Thank you very much, Dr. Grewal, for giving me a platform to speak my mind. What is the last word as far as the menopausal hormone replacement therapy is concerned? We all know that, the woman is living up to 70 years today, and that means 1/3 of her life she's spending when she's postmenopausal. There was a time in 60s when the craze for starting postmenopausal therapy with estrogen came, because women wanted to be young all the time. But by the, it is said that, in 70, 50, one of the top 5 prescriptions, one prescription was menopausal estrogen therapy. But by 70s, early 80s, we came to know that endometrial cancer has increased 4 to 5 times, and then a whole lot of changes were brought about as far as the hormonal therapy in menopause is concerned. Then came a study which was VHI study, and I cannot spend time here on VHI study, but this particular study brought in results which came as a storm. It showed that, there was a 30% increase in coronary disease, 40% increase in stroke, and there was 2 times the problems of venous thromboembolism there. A slight increase when a breast cancer was also noted, and there was an increased rate of dementia. While there were benefits were there, because there was an improvement in colorectal cancer, the symptoms improved because of the vasomotor symptoms and urogenital symptoms. But because of the adverse effect, the VHI communicated, and the first arm was stopped immediately, and there was an extreme adverse publicity as far as the menopausal hormone replacement therapy was concerned. In fact, I was there at that particular time in America for some time, and I found, each and every doctor was informed about the results of the VHI study. So what is the current position now? The current position globally, whether it is the North America, whether it's Europe, or whether it's our own country, and our ministry guideline says that now the hormone replacement therapy, which is called a menopausal hormone therapy, is to be used only in symptomatic patients. Hormone therapy should only be given for treatment of vasomotor symptoms, for symptoms of gynecological menopausal syndrome, which we call vaginal atrophy, and various kind of urinary symptoms which are involved into it. It should be given, and it should be given for treatment of osteoporosis. Now, the current guidelines and the recommendations are that prescription should be given, the lowest effective dose should be used. It should be given for the shortest possible time, initially for 6 to 12 months, and then the patient has to be reviewed every time, 6 to 12 months, and then it can be further continued. But it can be safely given up to 5 years with every 6 months or yearly evaluation. As far as the osteoporosis is concerned, we all know about it, that the better medical therapy like bisphosphonates can be used. They are much better than using a hormone replacement therapy. They can be used along with calcium supplementation and a vitamin D supplementation. Now, we find nearly 20% of our patients have premature menopause, that is menopause coming earlier than 40 years. And this hormone replacement therapy can be given if there is no contraindication, and she can take it very safely up to her natural age of menopause. It is also given that this can be used as add-back therapy whenever we gynecologists use GnRH therapy. But as far as the gynecological urinary menopausal syndrome is concerned, there it is said that instead of systemic therapy, local vaginal estrogens, whether in the form of a cream or a tablet or a ring, can be very safely used. Now, a couple of things which have come very lately is that everybody who's hearing me should know about it, that menopausal hormone therapy is not to be given as far as primary or secondary prevention of coronary heart disease is concerned. We should be very, very clear that this is not indicated both for primary or secondary prevention. And secondly, for cases of dementia and for wrinkling of or the skin changes which occur in a menopause or loss of memory, for improving memory, this menopausal hormone therapy is not to be given. So I repeat again, in a woman with intact uterus, we give estrogen and progesterone combination as to prevent endometrial cancer. But in case if the uterus is out, the estrogen therapy is sufficient. The routes are usually the oral. The progestogens which is used, the estrogen which is used is conjugated equine estrogen or estradiol. I'm not going to get into combination of it. And as far the progestogens is concerned, the old timer had been medroxyprogesterone acetate, but now newer ones have come, dehydrogesterone, micronized progesterone, and other things. But the dictum remains that the shortest possible dose, smallest possible dose for the shortest time, it need to be given. Now, the counseling is very, very important, and this requires a special emphasis that before starting menopausal hormone therapy, each patient must be individually and properly counseled about the advantages and disadvantages, and this should be really documented that this all has been done. There are preliminary few investigation also need to be done before this particular therapy is started, but I feel this particular therapy should not be held back from a genuinely and a needy patients who are a young postmenopausal patients and patients who have symptoms. They should not be deprived of menopausal hormone therapy, and it can be safely and freely given for 3 to 5 years. The question goes without saying that, you know, from time to time evaluation is needed. There are certain contraindication, the effects, as far as I just want to clarify, as for the hormone replacement therapy is concerned, that the major adverse effects is thromboembolism. And I have already said that, you know, this is not to be given for primary or secondary prevention of a coronary heart disease. As for the breast cancer is concerned, we all know that it is the, one of the big contraindication to give in a patients who have got a breast cancer or any cancer which is estrogen provoked cancer. Their chances of increase is seen between 6 to 7 years. And that particular time, the relative risk is about 1.4, but it is seen that one past 7 years of hormone replacement therapy, this particular increase is not noted. So with these kind of words, I feel that, you know, we should be very clear what are the cases where hormone replacement therapy has to be given. I repeat again, for osteoporosis, it is our policy not to give hormone replacement therapy. We give them alternative treatment in such patients. So I think with these words, I think my few words about menopausal hormone replacement therapy is concerned, I think, you know, this is what I need to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jain. Thank you very much. And a very clear message, no confusion, no ifs and buts, no this and that trial. Clear message to all of you. Thank you very much for being with us, Dr. Jain. It's a pleasure now to invite a young activist. I'm a great fan of hers, and I must congratulate her for her statement style. It's not a hairstyle, I call it a statement. Congratulations, Dr. Surbhi, for that lovely hairstyle. I don't know how many oldies are here, but they might remember Persis Kambata of the 1970s. That's what you remind me of. It's a pleasure to have you. And I'd like you to speak about the challenges a young girl faces at Menarche, challenges of self, challenges of her family, and challenges of her society. So kindly take us through the challenges a young girl goes through when she attains Menarche. Welcome, Dr. Surbhi.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks to the DMA जिसने मुझे प्लेटफॉर्म दिया बोलने के लिए. एंड जैसे सर ने कहा कि मैं गायनेकोलॉजिस्ट से ज़्यादा एक सोशल एक्टिविस्ट हो गई हूँ और पिछले 5-6 सालों से सिर्फ सोशल वर्क पे ही ज़्यादा कंसंट्रेट कर रही हूँ. मेरे ख्याल से शारदा मैम के साथ 1-2 बार प्लेटफॉर्म शेयर किया है हम लोगों ने. मैं मेंस्ट्रुअल अवेयरनेस पे काम करती हूँ. तो बेसिकली सर जो मैंने अपनी मतलब अगर मैंने देखा जाए तो मेरी लाइफ के 2 स्टेजेस मैंने अभी देखे. एक स्टेज जब मैं चेयर के इस तरफ होती थी और मैं सिर्फ डिजीज़ ट्रीट करती थी. जब मेरे पास कोई पेशेंट आता था मुझे सिर्फ ये बताता कि प्यूबर्टी मेनोरेजिया होता है, रेगुलर मेंस्ट्रुएशन होता है या डिलेड मेंस्ट्रुएशन है या प्राइमरी एमिनोरिया है. तो एक स्टेज वो थी. एंड नाउ अगर मैं देखती हूँ तो मैं टेबल के दूसरी तरफ हूँ जहाँ पे सोसाइटी कैसे लेती है मेंस्ट्रुएशन को, उसकी क्या प्रॉब्लम्स है, मैं उसको डील करती हूँ या उनको समझने की कोशिश करती हूँ. तो अगर मैं सोसाइटी वाले पार्ट पे जब मैं एंटर करती हूँ तो प्रॉब्लम ये सब तो बहुत पीछे वाली प्रॉब्लम है जो हम एज ए डॉक्टर देखते हैं. सोसाइटी की ओवरऑल इतनी सारी प्रॉब्लम्स हैं टुवर्ड्स मेनार्क. अगर मैं सोचूँ तो अगर मैं आज की डेट में बात करूँ तो जहाँ मैं देख पाती हूँ कि जो ये चैलेंजेस हैं टू द मेंस्ट्रुएटर में मैं सिर्फ फीमेल्स को इंक्लूड नहीं कर रही हूँ, मैं सारे जेंडर को इंक्लूड कर रही हूँ, तो ऑल द मेंस्ट्रुएटर्स, टू द पेरेंट्स एंड टू द टीचर्स। अब ये जो एक, क्योंकि मिनार्क जब होता है तो एक बच्चा अकेले कभी भी उसको फेस नहीं कर रहा होता, ये पूरा एक सोसाइटी का एक अलग, मतलब इसमें सिस्टम, मिथ्स और उनके जो भी कहना चाहिए उनकी घर के जो उनके संस्कार और जो बहुत सारी चीजें होती हैं, उन सब के साथ वो एक साथ उसका एनकाउंटर होता है। मतलब अगर मैं देखूँ तो मिनार्क प्यूबर्टी की वो स्टेज है जहां हम एडल्टहुड की पाथ की तरफ चल पड़े, मतलब वो डोर हमने ओपन कर दिया है टुवर्ड्स द एडल्टहुड। अब ये जो हमारी सोसाइटी में जो इसका इंटरेक्शन होता है पीरियड्स का या मेंस्ट्रुएशन का एक लड़की के लिए उस एज पे, तो ये बहुत कोई पॉजिटिव नहीं होता। ज़्यादातर मैक्सिमम टाइम पे, जितना मैंने बहुत सारे सर्वेज किए, बहुत सारे बच्चों के साथ मेरे फॉर्म्स भरवाए, क्वेश्चनेयर्स भरवाया, 80% लड़कियों को ये पता ही नहीं होता फर्स्ट पीरियड आने से पहले कि उनको पीरियड्स, उनकी लाइफ में कुछ इंसिडेंट्स होने वाले हैं। मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम एक एक्सीडेंट की तरह से आते हैं। उस एक्सीडेंट की जो एक तो टेंडर एज, ऊपर से एक ब्लड देख के किसी को भी जो ट्रॉमा जो होता है, एंड सेकेंडली जब वो अपने घर में उसको इंट्रोड्यूस करते हैं, अपनी क्लास में टीचर को इंट्रोड्यूस करते हैं, तो जो उनका एटीट्यूड होता है टुवर्ड्स पीरियड, वो एक और ट्रॉमा होता है बच्चे के लिए, एक और सेकंड ट्रॉमा होता है कि अगर मतलब जैसे कि मैं सोचती हूँ कि मेरा पीरियड्स आज से 30-35 ईयर्स बैक, अगर मुझे जब मैं 14-15 में होंगी, तो अगर मैं उस समय को याद करूँ तो मेरे लिए भी एक एक्सीडेंट था। और जब मैंने अपनी मम्मी को बोला तो उन्होंने मुझे बोला कुछ नहीं, सबको होता है, ये ले, तब कपड़ा होता था कि कपड़ा ले लो। एंड आज अगर मैं देखती हूँ, अगर आफ्टर 35 ईयर्स, तो बहुत चेंज नहीं हुआ है। बस ड्यू टू टेक्नोलॉजी, ड्यू टू एडवांसमेंट, ये है कि लोगों को अब ये बताना नहीं पड़ता कि पैड्स क्या होते हैं या पैड्स कैसे यूज़ करते हैं, थोड़ा सा ये चेंज हुआ है। लेकिन ये भी एक क्लास के अंदर अगर देखा जाए, क्योंकि अगर जैसे मैं हूँ, आज डॉक्टर हूँ, लेकिन मेरी जो बैकग्राउंड है वो एक बहुत मिडिल क्लास से है, कि जो कि मेरे पेरेंट्स पहली बार गांव से बाहर निकले थे, तो वो उस चीज़ को कैरी करते हैं घरों में, जो है मदर कैरी करती हैं, तो वो चीज़ें उसको आप क्या है, आप एक बाहर जो उसकी दुनिया है उसमें कितना भी एडवांसमेंट हो रहा है, लेकिन मदर उन पूरे संस्कारों को, पूरी ट्रेडिशंस को घर में कैरी किए हुए हैं। वो साइलेंस घर में अभी भी चल रहा है, वो स्टिग्मा घर में अभी भी चल रहा है। फादर को अलाउ नहीं है उसमें एंटर करने का, उस जोन में एंटर करने का, या आपके मतलब की बात नहीं। तो ये इसमें मैं देखूँ तो पिछले 30 ईयर्स में कोई बहुत चेंजेस नहीं आया। और ये मैं सिर्फ इसलिए नहीं कह रही हूँ कि मैं सिर्फ एक क्लास के साथ काम करती हूँ। मैं अभी रिसेंटली मैंने बहुत सारे प्राइवेट स्कूल्स में काम किया, इवन जीसस सेंट मैरी में मैंने अभी एक लेक्चर लिया, वहाँ भी यही हाल है कि घरों में डिस्कशंस नहीं होते। पीरियड एक एक्सीडेंट की तरह से, इसको टीनेजर को जो की लाइफ में एक एक्सीडेंट होता है पीरियड अभी भी। एंड सेकेंडली, अगर चलिए पीरियड्स आ गए, अब सेकंड जो एक प्रॉब्लम आती है वो है प्रोडक्ट चॉइस की, क्योंकि मदर को नहीं पता, उसने तो अपने आप को बड़ी मुश्किल से कपड़े से पैड पे शिफ्ट किया, और हमने जो भी प्रोग्राम्स चलाए वो कि कपड़ा यूज़ करना गलत है, पैड यूज़ करना है तो मतलब आप हाइजीनिक हो, तो लोगों ने इसको एक स्टेटस सिंबल बना लिया कि हम तो पैड। अब बिना ये सोचे कि पैड्स एनवायरनमेंट के लिए क्या है क्या नहीं है, अब वापस उस साइकिल को रिवर्स करना एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज फिर से है, कि आप दोबारा उनको ये समझाओ कि पैड्स यूज़ नहीं करो, आपका क्लॉथ पैड यूज़ करो, कपड़े वाले पैड यूज़ करो, या उनको वापस पे टैम्पून पे लेके आना, या मेंस्ट्रुअल कप पे, क्योंकि इतनी मुश्किल, इतना जो हमारी इंडस्ट्री है, जिसने ये पैड मेकिंग इंडस्ट्री है, इसने इतनी बुरी तरह से ब्रेन वॉश किया है। एंड कहीं ना कहीं हम सब ने भी उसको सपोर्ट किया उस वक्त, क्योंकि हमें लगा कि शायद ये एक ऑल्टरनेट है। प्रॉब्लम ये प्रोडक्ट्स की कभी भी नहीं थी, प्रॉब्लम्स मेंस्ट्रुएशन कभी भी नहीं थी, प्रॉब्लम हमेशा माइंडसेट रही है। और एक्चुअल में हमने माइंडसेट पे सबसे कम काम किया है। हमने, अगर मैं सोचूं एज ए डॉक्टर जब मैं थी, तो मैं अपने आप को ये मानती थी कि मैं एक नॉलेजेबल हूँ और मुझे सब पता है। अब अगर मेरे सामने कोई पेशेंट है और वो आके कहता है कि हम ऐसा इस्तेमाल करते हैं, हम तो ये करते हैं, तो सडनली मेरा चेंज, मतलब मुझे ऐसा लगता था कितने बेवकूफ़ है, इनको ये भी नहीं पता, अभी भी कपड़ा लगाते हो। मतलब जिस तरह से मैंने उनको बोला, तो उनके दिमाग में ये था कि कपड़ा लगाना कितनी गंदी बात है, और मतलब हमें तो लोग ऐसे देखते हैं। अब जब मैं उस फेज पे आती हूँ कि मतलब जो गिवर और जो रिसीवर है, उस वाले का जो डिस्टेंस अगर मैं कम करके देखती हूँ, देन आई कैन अंडरस्टैंड कि उन्होंने क्या फेस किया हुआ है, क्या प्रॉब्लम्स उनको है। अभी अगर मतलब आज की डेट में बात करें, अगर मैं सोचूं कि बच्चों को नॉलेज की प्रॉब्लम कहाँ है, नॉलेज की प्रॉब्लम ये, एक तो कि पीरियड्स के बारे में लोग अगर एजुकेशन दे रहे हैं, अवेयरनेस कर रहे हैं, तो उनको सिर्फ एक चीज़ पता है, पैड डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करो और पैड लगाने के लिए मोटिवेट करो। कोई ये नहीं बताना चाहता कि मेंस्ट्रुअल हेल्थ भी कोई चीज़ होती है, व्हाट इज़ नॉर्मल, व्हाट इज़ एबनॉर्मल, व्हाट इज़ अलार्मिंग। किसी को नहीं ये बताने में इंटरेस्ट नहीं है कि व्हाट इज़ द राइट एज फॉर मेंस्ट्रुएशन। लाइक अगर मैं बोलती हूँ 11 से 14, तो एडवर्टाइजमेंट में ज़्यादा लोग सुनते हैं, नॉर्मल एजुकेशन की फॉर्म में इसको कभी नहीं बताते कि 9 to 16 ईयर राइट एज है, 16 ईयर से लेट होता है तो आपको डॉक्टर से मिलना है। या अगर 9 ईयर्स से अर्ली हो रहे हैं तो आपको डॉक्टर से मिले तो नॉर्मल एबनॉर्मल नहीं पता, पीरियड्स की कितने डेज की ब्लीडिंग नॉर्मल है, लोगों को ये नहीं पता साइकिल कैसे काउंट करते हैं। आप अगर अपनी प्रैक्टिस में भी हम लोग देखते थे, अगर हम पूछते थे कि लास्ट पीरियड कब आया था तो हमने उस दिन को सर धोया था। उनको ये हम कभी मतलब अभी हम इस पे भी नहीं कि वो पीरियड की साइकिल काउंट कैसे करना है, कैसे उसे पता चले कि वेदर इट इज़ नॉर्मल और एबनॉर्मल, महीने में 2 बार आ गया जी, 2 महीने हो गए नहीं आया। तो हम अभी तक उनको यही वाली चीज़ें समझाने, मतलब जो मेरा मानना है कि एजुकेशन अगर या अवेयरनेस करना था तो हमें इन चीज़ों पे करना था, ना कि हम पूरी एजुकेशन और अवेयरनेस सिर्फ प्रोडक्ट्स पे करते रहे। और प्रोडक्ट्स में भी हम मार्केट ड्रिवन इतना ज़्यादा था, हमारा जो रिसोर्सेज थे कि हमने अभी तक मैं सोचूं तो मेंस्ट्रुएशन पे बहुत कम, अवेयरनेस और एजुकेशन पे नहीं हुआ। ये सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है, क्योंकि पेरेंट्स टीचर दोनों उस माहौल से आए हैं जहाँ पर इस पे बात नहीं होती थी। उनकी क्लास में साइंस में चैप्टर छोड़ दिया जाता था, टीचर नहीं पढ़ाते थे, वो कंफर्टेबल नहीं है बच्चों के साथ डिस्कशन करने में, वो वोकैबुलरी नहीं है कि कैसे बच्चों के साथ कन्वर्सेशन किया जाए अगर पीरियड्स की बात है। वो अगर एक ही क्लास में कोएड स्कूल है तो लड़की को अगर पीरियड्स आ गए तो कैसे टीचर कॉन्फिडेंस अपने फेस पे वो कॉन्फिडेंस लेकर उसको कहे कि कोई बात नहीं बेटा नॉर्मल है, आप जाओ मेडिकल रूम में। नहीं, उसके फेस पे जो पहला एक्सप्रेशन आता है वो पूरी क्लास को समझ में आता है कि कुछ ऐसा हो गया जो नहीं होना चाहिए था। तो ये सारी चीज़ों के लिए मुझे लगता है कि अगर मीनार के चैलेंज सिर्फ उस लड़की के साथ नहीं है, सारा ये पूरा एक सोसाइटी को ओवरऑल कि अगर हम बच्चे को समझा रहे हैं, बच्चा जाके तो घर में चेंजेस नहीं लेके आएगा ना, बच्चे के साथ पेरेंट्स और टीचर। वो अगर मैं अभी सोचती हूँ तो पिछले कुछ सालों में, मतलब अभी ये पीछे आप बोर्ड देख रहे होंगे हैप्पी बर्थडे सच्ची सहेली, तो हमारी सच्ची सहेली एक एनजीओ के थ्रू मैं काम करती हूँ जिसको हमने शुरू किया है, 5 साल हुए हैं। तो इस पूरे 5 साल में हमने भी पिछले 2 साल से जो शुरू किया है कि पेरेंट्स की ट्रेनिंग, साइंस टीचर्स की ट्रेनिंग, कि साइंस में वो चैप्टर कैसे पढ़ाना है बच्चों को, कैसे उनको ये समझाना है कि दिस इज़ योर बॉडी, नो योर बॉडी। अभी भी अगर बच्चों से बात करते हैं तो बॉडी के पार्ट्स बताने में भी पेरेंट्स को शर्म आती है, उसके भी क्या क्या नाम रखे जाते हैं। उसके बाद मतलब लड़के और लड़कियां किस तरह से साइन लैंग्वेज में जो जिस तरह से इस चीज़ को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, वो सब कुछ इतना मतलब मैं बोलूँगी कि डिग्निटी के लिए, किसी भी लड़की की डिग्निटी के लिए बहुत ही नेगेटिव एक स्टार्ट होता है जब हम इस पीरियड्स को देखें। तो मुझे लगता है कि जो मेरा मानना है कि चैलेंजेस अभी जो हैं वो मेंस्ट्रुएटर, पेरेंट्स और टीचर लेवल पे, और हमें इसको एक सिस्टमैटिक वे में खत्म करना पड़ेगा। अगर हम सोचें कि हम प्रोडक्ट्स बांटते रहेंगे तो कुछ नहीं होगा, अगर हम सोचें कि स्कूल में जाके करिकुलम बढ़ा देंगे तो भी कुछ नहीं होगा, अगर हम सोचें कि पेरेंट्स की काउंसलिंग, ये एक सिस्टमेटिक वे में हमें लेके आना पड़ेगा कि हम ये एहसास करा पाए पेरेंट्स को, टीचर को और बच्चों को कि ये अब एक नॉर्मल प्रोसेस है, सांस लेना, दिल धड़कने जैसा। बस आपको पता होना चाहिए कि कब ये नॉर्मल है, कब ये एबनॉर्मल है, और कब आप ये अलार्मिंग है कि कब आपको डॉक्टर के पास तुरंत जाना है। सारे डिसीजन आप मत लो। एंड सेकेंडली, लोगों को ये रियलाइज बार बार बताने के बाद कि तुम इतने बेवकूफ़ हो, तुम तो ये मिथ्स फॉलो करते हो, तुम्हें तो इतना भी नहीं पता। हमें ये समझना चाहिए कि वो किस बैकग्राउंड से, किस माइंडसेट को वो लेके कैरी कर रहे हैं। तो हमें उनको समझ के उनको ये बताना चाहिए कि मतलब उनको ये बताने के बजाय कि आप कम हो, उनको ये बताना चाहिए कि हम भी कभी ऐसे थे, हमने सीख लिया, आओ अब तुम भी सीख लो, आओ अब इस जर्नी में तुम भी हमारे साथ चलो, हम तुम्हें भी बताते हैं। तो किसी को ये एहसास कराए बिना कि तुम कम हो, तुम बेवकूफ़ हो, हम ये बताएं कि कोई बात नहीं, कभी हम भी यहाँ थे, हमें नॉलेज हो गई, आओ हाथ मिलाते हैं, अब हम इसको आगे लेके चलते हैं। पुराने लोग इंटेलिजेंट थे मगर दिमाग हमारे पास भी है, तो चलो जैसे मिथ्स को लेकर हम बहुत सारी छोटी छोटी कहानियाँ की तरह से हम लोग बताते हैं, वो कभी हम लोग फिर से डिस्कस करेंगे इस चीज़ को लेके। बट मैं जैसे मैम से बहुत सहमत हूँ, सुनीता मित्तल मैम ने, कि विमेन हेल्थ को अगर हम कभी भी लेके चलते हैं तो वो इंडिविजुअल हेल्थ नहीं होती, फिजिकल, इमोशनल, सोशल, मेंटल, इंटेलेक्चुअल, स्पिरिचुअल, होलिस्टिक हेल्थ की हम बात करते हैं। तो खाली एक एस्पेक्ट को अगर हम लेके चलेंगे तो वुमेन डेवलपमेंट पे बहुत ज़्यादा काम नहीं कर पाएंगे। और इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं थैंक यू बोलना चाहूँगी सर को कि आपने
Thank
मुझे
you.
डॉक्टर ग्रेवाल, मैं 1 मिनट लूंगी। आई थिंक सुरभि ने
Sure.
बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट इशू उठाया, पैड्स का। जो आज की हिंदुस्तान में जो भी फैक्ट्रीज पैड्स बनाती हैं वो ब्लीच्ड पैड्स हैं, एंड दैट इज हार्मफुल फॉर अ वुमन हेल्थ. She never raised this particular issue, but I think DMH should take an initiative just on this particular thing, that all these people who are making pads, those who are bleached, they are harmful, and those friendly pads are not available. These pads can increase endometriosis, they can cause PID, they can cause cancers, and I think, Surabhi, I'm with you when you take up this particular stand. I tried my hard that it should be done, and I think, Dr. Grewal, you should take it very sincerely, this particular issue. You have to take two things, what Dr. Ahuja has said, that vaccination during pregnancy, the DMA has to promote, and Dr. Surabhi, your mission for getting the right kind of pads and getting back to same cloth made pads, I think that will be the ideal thing. You should not stop at this. I am with you.
Thank you,
थैंक यू
ma'am.
सो मच
Thank
मैम.
you.
आपने एक
Thank you,
बार
Surbhi.
5p पाउच में हम लोगों ने 5p रखा था, तो पैड्स, पेंटी, पेपर सोप, पेपर बैग एंड रफ पेपर. तो हम लोग उसमें पहले पॉलिथीन रखते थे. एक दिन शारदा मैम के साथ हम लोग ये डिमॉन्स्ट्रेशन कर रहे थे,
I'm sure.
तो मैम ने
I'm
उस
sure
दिन
we
बोला कि कल से
all-
ये पॉलिथीन नहीं होना चाहिए. उसके बाद से मैम थैंकफुली हम लोग उसमें पॉलिथीन हटा के अब से
I
पेपर
think
बैग यूज कर रहे हैं.
I'm thankful, ma'am. Thankful to Surbhi to raise it, and thankful to Dr. Sharda Jain to take it up. I've written it, ma'am. I think out of this meeting, we've already got an agenda to work. And as you mentioned about the side effects and the dangers of using such pads, we have now the next speaker who is speaking about the dangers in women health. It's an absolute pleasure to have Dr. Sapna Nangia, one of the most distinguished oncologists coming from Northern India. And she's based in Chennai now, but I think what she has been doing in management of malignancies for women is just out of the world. So ma'am, I would just pose two questions to Dr. Sapna Nangia. In breast cancer, what is new in diagnostics? And what is the impact of treatment of breast cancer on the risk of heart disease?
Thank
So
you so much.
because the topic is so big, so I'll request you to just shorten it with these two, but I'm sure you'll be doing justice to your time. Welcome, Dr. Nangia.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grewal. It's indeed such a pleasure to be back with the Delhi fraternity. And thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to meet my friends again. So I'll start, I'd like to share my screen if I may. So, I think it's very relevant when we talk about women's health in India. It's very relevant for us to be talking about breast cancer. One, because now we can see that breast cancer is no longer the second most common cancer in Indian women, but it's in fact become the most common cancer. It's cervical cancer. We know that with the various changes that have taken place in the demographics of Indian women, cervical cancer is not that common and breast cancer is more common. And what is important to note is there are two things that are important to note. And this is our own Indian data from Tata Memorial Hospital, which tells us that early breast cancer results in India are very good. And about 85% of patients are going to be disease-free at 5 years. And of course, even with locally advanced breast cancer, the results are excellent, with about 70% of women being disease-free at the end of 5 years. But still, of course, early detection is better. And which is where your question, Dr. Grewal, becomes relevant. So I would like to say that beyond mammography, which we all know about for a long time, and then MR mammogram, which is an expensive modality and therefore not accessible for a lot of people. There is now the development of what is called digital breast tomosynthesis. And in digital breast tomosynthesis, basically what is happening is that there is an arc, the X-ray machine moves like an arc around the breast, and then we can reconstruct the breast in very thin slices. So like the video that you can see. And what it does is that it reduces the possibility of false negatives, false positives, and especially, so basically improves the sensitivity and specificity of a mammogram, reduces recall. It may be used both for screening as well as with screening as well as for diagnostic purposes. So a woman who comes with a palpable breast lump, she also gains from a digital breast tomosynthesis. So as you can see here, this is a routine mammogram, and then this is a tomosynthesis, and the lesion is showing up much more clearly. In the upper pane also, we can see 2D to 3D. There is a difference. So that is the one thing that has changed in, of course, there's so many things that have changed. This is a small segment. One thing that is allowing us to screen people better. Now, your question about, breast cancer and the cardiac consequences of breast cancer. So I'd like to mention here that radiation forms an integral part of breast cancer treatment. And what people don't realize, what very often people think this is just a local therapy, but this local therapy actually improves survival. So at 15 years, a woman who has one lymph node positive, for example, after a mastectomy, if she's had a radiation, she has a significantly better chance of being alive. So keeping the fact in mind that our women are living longer because of various reasons, early diagnosis, better treatments, we are paying attention to what are called survivorship issues. And one of the issues is cardiac disease. So very recently in the recent ASCO, it has come up, for example, that women who are taking trastuzumab, Herceptin and adriamycin, if they are given ACE inhibitors along with their treatment, their chances of developing a cardiac problem reduces significantly. And this is as recent as like last week that this has sort of become something that I expect will become standard of care. Similarly, as I mentioned, radiation is something that we are routinely using for breast cancer patients after mastectomy as well as after breast conserving surgery. So it becomes relevant to discuss or to let people know that what this technology does in breast cancer, what newer technologies in breast cancer can do to reduce cardiac impact of treatment. So this is basically, I want to tell you a little bit about proton therapy. This is the first proton therapy center in the country and the only one at present. And in fact, the only one in this part of the world. Protons are a special kind of radiation. When they go into the body, they don't go deep. They go to the target that you have identified. So an X-ray like this blue thing would go through and through the body, but a proton will stop where you want it to stop. So in breast cancer, you can see what happens. Now, this is a left-sided breast cancer patient, and this is a routine treatment wherein a lot of dose can go to the heart, to the lungs, as well as the opposite breast. And with proton therapy, what happens is that we are able to reduce the dose that goes not just to the heart, but also to the left anterior descending. Even in a right-sided breast cancer patient, the radiation dose that goes to the breast or to the lungs is less, and also to the right coronary artery is significantly decreased. So this is one technology that is new. For patients who are able to afford, it's definitely something that is to be considered. And in patients who are not able to afford, there is a technology called deep inspiratory breath hold. It is available in many hospitals in Delhi. And therefore, I urge DMA members, if they have a breast cancer patient and who's been advised radiation, to discuss with them whether they have been advised deep inspiratory breath hold. In deep inspiratory breath hold, the patient holds her breath and the radiation is given only in deep inspiration. What that does is that the radiation is given only when a distance has been created with the heart. And because of that, we are able to reduce the dose received by the heart. Of course, proton therapy takes it like many notches higher. So for example, if you see the mean heart dose comes down very substantially from 5 with deep inspiratory breath hold, this is the work, our experience in Indraprastha Apollo, to less than 1 gray with proton, which is what we're doing in Chennai. But deep inspiratory breath hold itself is something that we must think about. So at Apollo Proton, we have started this treatment, and what you can see is that we are able to achieve, this is one of our first patients on a registry, prospective registry, and we are able to bring down the heart dose to about 1/10, about a quarter or a 1/10 of what is possible without using proton. And so this is one technology that is good. The other thing, of course, that we have to know when we are talking about identifying patients who require special attention for preventing cardiac disease, it's young women, they have a much higher chance. Diabetics, important in India. Obese patients, again important in India. Smokers, not so much of a common issue currently in the Indian scenario, but relevant. Hypertensive patients, patients who've had ischemic heart disease, as well as who've had bilateral cancer. So these are the situations where I would urge you that as people in charge of patients or doctors who are being consulted along with oncologists, you need to be aware that there are efforts being made to reduce the cardiac side effects of treatment, both in chemotherapy as well as in radiation therapy.
Thank you. That was lovely, lovely, Dr. Nangia. Come to know that such an advancement in therapy and breast cancer being one of the most common cancers in India. Pleasure to have you over and hearing such a beautiful scientific talk.
Thank you so much.
Well, you set the ball rolling for us to shift the heart, and we have our first male speaker in a woman's health program, and the only male issue in a female's health is the heart. Professor Vijay Trehan, the head of Department of Cardiology at the GV Pant Hospital. Professor Trehan, it is said that there is a soft heart. Somebody says somebody is heartless. Somebody says somebody's heart is very strong. How do these three hearts differ from a woman's heart?
So thank you very much for inviting me, the only male member, to talk about the female issues here. Some people consider they're like small men because their body weight, body surface area is small. So maybe for per kg body weight, you can decide treatment accordingly. But I think there is a difference. There is a difference. We have different chromosomes. That is the real difference. But at the same time, there is a difference in perception. Females, they perceive differently about themselves, and the society also perceives different. Means whether the problem is really there or not, then what do the rest of the family member and what does the society feel about the real problem? So I think these are two important issues, and there are some myths. And Dr. Sapna Nangia, I think she really touched upon breast cancer. And if I look at the breast cancer vis-a-vis cardiovascular problem, then I think for every lady who's dying of breast cancer, we have at least 10 times deaths because of cardiovascular disease. So probably cardiovascular diseases are very important. And in fact, if you take all the cancers in women, not only breast cancer, you take cancer, uterus and ovaries and other organs, even then they fall short of the toll of the death which is taken by the cardiovascular problems. So cardiovascular problems are very, very important. In fact, they were far, far more important deaths about 30, 40 years ago, when people just didn't know anything whether the women can catch a heart disease or not. In the last 3 to 4 decades, there have been some improvement and awareness and preventive measures. And we have started to be aware and prevent as well as promptly treat it. Then, as Dr. Sharda Jain was talking about, see, hormone replacement therapy, which should not be given, and if you give it, you are probably going to get into more trouble. So people used to believe that, well, the heart disease will be caught by the elderly female. I think that is also probably not correct. You can have younger female as young as 30 years coming to us, the chest pain, which may be either because of atherosclerosis or because of some other problem which are specific to females. So even younger females can catch heart disease, which could be fatal. Then a lot of people feel that, well, I'm young, athletic, and doing yoga and a lot of marathon activities and very fit. So extremely unlikely for me to get a heart disease. I think even that is a myth. These are fine if you're athletic and you're doing yoga and other physical activities, but that doesn't totally make you fully say safe as well as heart disease is concerned. And a lot of people feel that, well, I have no symptoms, so why should I really consult a physician or a cardiologist? And I have no symptoms. I think even that is a myth. In fact, forget about preventing. If you get a cardiac problem, and that to acute cardiac problem, many a time your symptoms may be totally different. And by different, what I mean is, unlike the typical Bollywood style or you see in TVs and somebody coming with excruciating chest pain, and a lot of sweating and ghabrat, those things more often seen in men may not be seen in women. And in fact, many of the women might be totally asymptomatic and get a heart attack and might get complication and then symptoms related to complication. And in fact, rather than a chest pain, sense of pressure or sense of tightness is far more common. In fact, symptoms are usually not around the chest. You can get down towards navel, and a lot of people will have some kind of a nausea, bloated sensations, and could be up in the neck or in the shoulders or going into the head. So these symptoms are more common. And in fact, many of them might have just sweating, just ghabrat, dizziness, lightheadedness, or a lot of fatigue. So unusual or atypical symptoms are far more common in women. And in fact, if there are risk factors for getting a coronary disease or a heart attack or acute coronary syndromes, and if these atypical symptoms are there, I think all of us should know that they should be promptly taking a medical help, where they should be able to really sort it out whether it is something to do with heart problem or not. Because heart is muscle, and in an acute situation, if you delay, and very often the delay is on the part of the patient because we are not able to educate them that these symptoms could be related to heart disease. And in fact, even if the patient is aware or possibly suspecting that he or she has a heart disease and lands up in emergency, then I think uneducated medical personnel, because many a time they also have a gender bias. Any younger female coming with chest symptom, with symptoms of ghabrat, sweating, or atypical symptom, which I told, they will almost never suspect that it's a heart problem, and they will start looking for maybe ultrasound abdomen and endoscopies and many other things, and they will lose out a time. And many times we have seen you are making a diagnosis of pancreatitis or upper GI gastritis, and then the patient goes second day, now the patient is in heart failure, lot of shortness of breath, pulmonary edema. So I think even the physicians need to be educated, because we can't lose time. And in fact, like being a male person here on this female forum, I must admit that there was a study carried out in US, I think a couple of years ago, where it was found that if there is a male cardiologist or a physician attending to a younger female for really sorting out whether it's a heart problem or not, most of the males falter. It is females who can pick up atypical symptoms of a female much better than a male. So it might be good for a female, if she has atypical symptoms, to look for a female attending physician in the emergency. Now coming to the risk factors, I think the routine risk factors which are there in men, like cholesterol, high blood pressure, and high weight. Diabetes, I think especially in India and Delhi, diabetes is a very, very important risk factor. And in fact, many of them, if they are diabetic, they'll get heart problems without heart symptoms, because the sensory symptoms might be gone because of the autonomic neuropathy. In fact, a female which is given as some kind of a protection by God, I really do not know whether it's hormonal or not, because hormonal supplementation have not been really shown to be preventing it. But what we see is a female, if she becomes diabetic, she's more like a male. And we should start putting her like a male as far as all. So if there is a female and she's diabetic, it's like a male who's diabetic. So she's like a male, and she has on the top of that the risk of diabetes also. Smoking, far more is injurious to females. Inactivity, often female will say, I'm working throughout the day, lekin wo ghar mein chote mote kaam kar rahi hai, and that is really not a good aerobic exercise. So what you really need is a good aerobic exercise if you really want to prevent heart disease. Family history in female is far more relevant. And then some specific inflammatory heart disease, inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid, lupus, are far more common in females. So females have a special predilection. And a mental stress and depression, I think females significantly outnumber male. And there is this is an echo. I think anyone can see this is a left ventricle. We can see it is contracting well. So this a young lady, she's around 40. She was working in a corporate setup, and this was a checkup which was done, and she was absolutely fine before entering into the corporate setup. And one fine day, she gets severe chest pain, ghabrat, sweating, and she's brought to an emergency. Her ECG shows ST elevation, which is interpreted as acute MI. And rather than doing a thrombolysis, she's taken to the cath lab. Her enzymes were elevated, like troponin T was positive, and in the cath lab. And this is the echo. If you see here, this part of the chamber, these parts are still contracting. But if you look at this part, this is just ballooned up. Here, if you see, this is contracting well. These two walls are opposing. But here, if you see, it is ballooned up, is not contracting. So this is like a heart which has been broken into two. The apical part, which is not contracting, and then a basal part, which is contracting somewhat. This is known as a broken heart syndrome, which is specifically seen in younger females who are in corporate setups or otherwise who meet with some kind of an acute emotional stress, like loss of some important member in the family. And after we took her to the cath lab and did the angiogram, coronary arteries are absolutely normal. So this is a totally different animal, and just supportive treatment, and subsequently everything got well. So if you try to give thrombolysis, probably she can have a bleed. And if you try to look for some bending here and there and try to insert stent, I think it do more harm to her than benefit. Similarly, this is another angiogram of a lady who had typical symptoms of angina, and somebody was just ready to wire it and put a stent here, but somebody else thought that rather than wiring it, just try to have a look inside with the help of an ultrasound. And what they found was the artery was dissected. This is like an artery. If you have a bleeding inside the artery, these are the two layers. Outer layer is very strong, the inner layer is thin intima. So if you have a bleeding here, what will happen? The blood will deflect the deflectable, easily deflectable inner layer. So that will compromise the lumen, and that can even tear. That can produce a picture like this. This is known as a spontaneous coronary artery dissection. Women are far more vulnerable to get spontaneous coronary artery dissection. And if you have a younger female, especially if there is a pregnant female and she arrives to you with something like a heart attack, I think there's a great chance that you're dealing with this kind of a pathology and not atherosclerosis. And typically, if you don't do anything to them, just manage them conservatively over a period of time, all these things will heal and the artery will become like this on cut section, that is histopathological, and angiographically this lumen will normalize. So they might require a different kind of a management also. As far as menopause is concerned, I don't think I really need to touch. And as far as pregnancy is concerned, I think we have a huge statements coming from different big scientific bodies. This is European Society of Cardiology. They have given a statement about as to how should we handle and anticipate problems in congenital heart disease, in pulmonary arterial hypertension, and different other situations like valvular heart disease, native or a prosthetic heart valve, and how should we manage these patients as far as anticoagulants are concerned, and how should you manage coronary heart disease and look for heart failure, and so on and so forth. I think I don't really need to get into detail. What I want to say is there are specific statements for essential hypertension, for heart failure related or unrelated to heart disease, and there are some general important statements which they have finally made for handling patients with heart disease during pregnancy. I really don't think I need to discuss about that. And finally, is the treatment different in men and women? I cited you one example that if it is a broken heart, probably you need to just manage them medically. If there is a dissection of the artery, you don't need to stent them. And if you really need to handle these cases, as far as medications are concerned, I don't think too much of a difference there unless you are pregnant with heart problem. As far as bypass surgery is concerned, because of the smaller stature, smaller vessel size, the women are less likely to tolerate it better. So if some ladies come with a heart attack or a significant coronary heart disease, I think non-surgical treatment might be preferred, where angioplasty is one of the issues. But finally, I like to discuss few points that somehow because of the gender bias, ladies are usually not given too much of cardiac rehabilitation. They are not also covered so well with aspirin because of fear of bleeding, which is correct only to some extent. To a large extent, it is incorrect because this is an antiplatelet drug. And what really affects the vaginal bleeding is anticoagulants, not antiplatelets. Similarly, statins, which are sheet anchor of therapy as far as prevention of heart disease is concerned, is also, ladies are also less likely to receive. I think from this platform, I should reiterate that ladies should be given statins the same way you are trying to give to the men. And in fact, some of the ladies will say that, well, heart disease is seen in mainly men and not in women. And if you see it in women, it is usually because of some problem in their families. So they have got it genetically, and probably I cannot do anything. I probably cannot do anything. I think that is also a myth, because as far as genetics is concerned, it plays some part, but vast majority of the part is by your phenotype, your modifiable factors. So if you modify them to control your weight, control your blood pressure, do exercise, quit smoking, and manage your blood sugar, or prevent you from getting into diabetes, and have your diet which is much healthy, manage your stress, limit your alcohol, then more than 80% of the risk can be reduced. Mind it, mark it, more than 80% of the risk can be very easily reduced by these simple measures. So one should not be just taking it lying down, well, I'm a female, I've been given disease by my parents, so what do I do? Well, if you do all these things, you stand a fair chance of preventing heart disease. I think I'll wrap up my talk by this final slide.
Thank you very much, Professor Trehan. That was absolutely wonderful. And I think your very powerful statement about the society's attitude towards looking towards a woman's health. I think that sets the tone for a societal change looking towards women's health. And as Dr. Smita Mittal also, Professor Mittal mentioned, and you also mentioned, there is a feminization and aging happening. If you can stop sharing your slides, sir.
Sure.
Yeah. There is a phenomena of feminization and aging that's happening with elderly ladies outnumbering men. I always say this, jitni marji mujh pe tav de lo, maroge pehle hi. So there is a feminization and aging happening. And there, the heart disease, what you have mentioned, takes a very important role for physicians as to how they have to look after the heart of an elderly lady. Thank you very much, Professor Trehan. And I must say that the faculty has done phenomenal justice to the topic. It has not only just given presentations, but it has sensitized us at the DMA. And we have a very active medical activist, Dr. Neelam Lekhi, who's the Vice President. I'm sure she's listening and will take up certain of these issues. We now come to the presentation by our State Secretary. Every week, we are presenting this synopsis of a vaccination update on COVID. So I'll now invite Dr. Ajay Gambhir to give his vaccination update for the week, please.
Thank you, Dr. Gewal, and listening to Dr. Mittal on COVID journal and very well issues of by Dr. Meenakshi of the pregnancy, Dr. Sharda Jain on menopause, and like the wonderful part of Dr. Surbi, we have been working in adolescent, being a pediatrician, and we started in 1998, and what is normal and what is abnormal, and how to say no. Very basic things to do that, and malignancy to our own Dr. Trehan. Now the vaccines, and let us be bipartisan, that this is a rare occasion when we have, and I am speaking on behalf of Delhi Medical Association, what we have done, and on the form of our NGO Vaccine India, and a part of a lot of national and international agencies, whatever the information we are getting it, that this is the first time that we are having vaccine which is not child oriented. All pediatricians are born vaccinators and all vaccinologists, but now the first time it is adult vaccination. So we cannot divide between male and females, but there are some issues which are emerging, and every week there has been update on that. So our Prime Minister has taken that. India was having 60% coverage and 90%. So I'm only taking some of the points from the Prime Minister's speech. And once Prime Minister speaks, and we feel that we should take it seriously, they will be giving 2 indigenous make vaccines, and they want that most of us should be immunized by end of this year. And the government of India from June 21, from every state and every citizen will be doing that. And from the national thing to the international. Yesterday, day before yesterday, in G7 summit, which will start today, the 7 countries wanted to add to make it to D10. Why I'm telling you this? G7 is going to D10, democratic 10 countries. India has also been invited. So it is a pride for our country. And the main discussion is vaccine. And the vaccines to the unreached, and the vaccines, initially the G7 only gave $100 million, but now what they have done is that $500 million will be given by America. Rest of the countries are also giving the vaccines. So India, which is the largest producer, but is one of the biggest population, is failing to cope with the pressure. So we'll get a lot of support from America and with our friends to do that. So DMA wants equity. We are not supporting hoarding, storage and undue profits. And we have already told that all corporates, we have given the press statements, and day before yesterday, Mr. Rajdeep Desai had called one of our small nursing home that corporate hospitals should not hoard it. It should be available to all male, female, small nursing homes, small hospital, clinic. The big hospital should not hoard it. And the point which our madam was saying that the Fogchi has taken the matter, DMA, and one of the person has already filed a case in the Delhi High Court day before yesterday, and they had contacted DMA today that why pregnant woman is not giving vaccinated. So government of India is been pressurized not from the professional body but from the PILs and the litigation. Now this is the yesterday report from Delhi. You can see that positivity rate has fallen that, but that doesn't mean we should be complacent to do that. So as per the WHO, there have been issues of the vaccination in the pregnant women. We know that the mRNA vaccines have been allowed in some of the countries, but in my country, because there have been no trials and there have been no evidence, so far they have not allowed to pregnant women, but they have allowed, the DCGI allowed to the breastfeeding mothers and to the adolescents. So definitely, it has also been seen that the vaccinated women may transfer the antibodies to their infant. In the phase 3 trials, there were 100 women who got pregnant and they found that there is no side effect. I think very soon we'll be having some opinion by the Delhi High Court. A pregnant woman on Friday has approached. So today is Saturday. So I'm just telling you the latest information. So already when matter goes to the court, the government of India and government of Delhi has to come with the affidavit. So that matter from the professional body, Fogchis or DMA is definitely there. So we are on our job. Now the studies which are coming, that coronavirus vaccine is slightly less. You know, it is academic, 90.3% effective in women and 96% in men. So hardly any difference. So these type of reasons will come. Now the studies have basically, the data is coming from Pfizer and Moderna, from UK, Scotland and Israel. India is very poor in giving the data, and that is why so far our indigenous based vaccine has not been given emergency use authorization in America and even by the WHO. So we have to definitely push the government to come a transparent and share the data. They are less effective because of the menopause, because of the estrogen. So, and the coverage is also low, which has already been told by Dr. Mittal, that 60% females accounted for more cases of COVID and less coverage of the vaccination because of thing. Now, a recent survey shows that 38% reported more death related to COVID as delayed also because of lack of access of care. What are the long-term implications? So we have to see on the post-COVID scenario, and basically we are going off the pregnancy and the cancer screening. What are those? The issues, though we have not talked today, none of us has talked. In the trials, Pfizer vaccine had 100 samples for the HIV/AIDS positive women, and they have found even you are HIV positive, you must get vaccination. The response is good, but if you are not vaccinated, there will be late. There is a higher 10% mortality in the HIV positive, whether it is a male or woman. But one of the cases which has been reported 4 or 5 days back, that one of the female had 30 mutation and she was HIV positive and she has a numerous mutation. It is nothing specific to women, but definitely we will have to look into immunocompromise. Lot of our women and men are immunocompromised, maybe because of malnutrition, because of other diseases, comorbidities. Still we have to study that. Being a clinician, we only go on the pregnancy, cesareans and other things, but data will come and we are saying no impact on fertility has been seen. Long-term side effects have been highly unlikely. So far they are going equal to men. Pregnant women are likely to transfer antibody to uncommon women. So issues of the cancer. Now, if some patients, now the madam has talked about the breast cancer patients who have got a chemotherapy and got a immunotherapy, definitely we have to wait for 2 to 3 months before we give vaccines. But definitely all those people between that and anyone who is having a immunocompromised state like nephrotic syndrome or other should get vaccinated when they are not on steroids. So steroids more than 2 milligram per kg should not be given, and any patient who is having cancer should be given vaccination. That is a recommendation of CDC. Even of the breast and ovarian cancer, it is safe and effective for the people with the fabric, and that is the observation of the CDC, National Comprehensive Cancer Network. So this is a recommendation. The latest guideline, though late, given by Government of India, management of the COVID, which we have been talking, asymptomatic, mild, moderate, and severe. What are the caution? What are the symptoms? Now, this symptom target, there are software which we can add our symptom, and that is why there were networks and there were good softwares in America that they could detect only out of millions, only 15 patients got thromboembolic phenomena. So in India, we have to make this network amongst the professional bodies, amongst the academicians, and see to it that we should not go on the only typical effects or the typical symptoms. There are many more which we have to. Important is about the variant. The R value in present in UK, where the most genomic studies are going on, is 1.3. But the India virus, which is the Delta virus, the R value is 6. And in America, it has been found to be, it is found to be 8. So that means we have to still look about the mutants, and any mutant will be spreading to the 6 people or the 8 people in comparison to 1. The R value should be less than 1 if we want to contain the epidemic. Long COVID will also have more of involvement in the females. Data is still emerging, and some data which has come from the America, they have followed 1 million post COVID all, which is still going for more than 4 weeks since the last 1 year. So that part we have to still come across, because we are still coping with the acute COVID problem, and I think since last 1 week we are happy that it is not coming. The Zoo COVID studies which are going on in UK and America, they have confirmed that the variant has risen from 2.5% to the 6.5% in the month of June. So that's why we are talking about the Delta virus, which is an Indian virus, Alpha virus, which is a B117 UK virus. So that part we'll have to look into. Now in America, the adolescent 12 to 15 have also been included. Though in India, the trials have started from Zydus and from the other company. The Pfizer will also be testing, and the next testing, which is important and we have to follow, is between under 12 years. Now, under 12 years will be important because they have more antibodies, and we'll have to observe whether it has to be given or not. In adolescent, hospitalization rate increase. We thought that the epidemic will be rising and it will involving more of the children, mainly adolescent. But there was increase in a 5%, but the mortality was not increased, and that is why the CDC is saying keep observe that, and we should not be panic about the third wave involving the children. Monoclonal antibodies, different types are coming, and we have to look into which is good or not, because we have burnt our fingers by removing Remdesivir and other drugs from the list, which we have been telling DMA, IMA, and professional bodies have been telling the government, but the government was late to stop the plasma therapy. The treatment, the combination treatment, is costing 59,750. Whether it is cost effective or it is cost benefited, still data has to come. So we have to be very, very clear, should we give or not. But the issue is some people who are not steroid responsive and who have got complication, it will help us and stop the super-added infection like mucormycosis and the viral infection. So the studies which are coming here is the mesenchymal stem cells derived from the umbilical cord, because women are dealing with, the gynecologists are dealing with, the obstetricians are dealing with the pregnancy. So they may not be directly related to the female, but umbilical cord tissues are being taken and the trials are going on in phase 1 and 2. No adverse event has been seen. The multi-system is currently in the phase 3 trial. So lot of things are coming. In case of this type of a pandemic comes, we can use other therapies. These are under the trial. Mixing and match has been allowed in countries, some of the European countries, like in Germany and Canada, but in India it's still under trial. One group of scientists think that it should not be done because of the complication, while the other group says that it should be given because it will boost. Some people are not getting immunity with Covishield. We can give Covaxin or the other vaccine which are coming to the children. in children part, we should not be bothered. So far, the government has just given their guideline, and they have this time pre-launched that there may be third wave involving the children, and we should not be bothered that. So discourage use of remdesivir, no provision of insurance for the vaccine recipient. So vaccine is still not covered in the insurance policies, and more antibodies produced by Covishield and Covaxin. This is a study from the Indian market. A lot of matters are in the High Court, so a lot of administrative guidelines will be changing. And though our Chief Minister Kejriwal want to start a pan-city vaccination, which has been stopped, that no vaccination can be given at home. The High Court has not given order, Director General has not allowed. So corporates who are giving this vaccination should not use this, and anyone using it, you should inform the DMA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gambhir. Thank you very much. That was a good synopsis of the status of vaccination. Everybody is very keen to find out everything about vaccination. So that was the women health disease and a vaccination update, which we are going to do every week. Before I hand over to Dr. Alok Bhandari, my personal thanks to the distinguished faculty. I wouldn't hesitate to share. It was just one call or a message to all of them, and they all agreed so sweetly. I'm most humbled by the response that you gave. A very personal thanks to Deepika from Jackson Park, who have helped in the entire process. I would now invite Dr. Alok Bhandari to extend the formal vote of thanks.
Screen sharing kahan se? Yahan se?
Good afternoon, friends. It's been a very nice, pleasant afternoon, a good hot afternoon outside, but very healthy and lengthy discussion on women health, where all aspects have been very nicely covered by our eminent faculty, Dr. Sunita Mittal, Dr. Sharda Jain, Dr. Meenakshi, Sapna Nangia ji, and Surbhi. They are all eminent names in different aspects of women health. And in सबका दिल रखने के लिए हमारे दिल की बात कही Dr. Vijay Trehan ने. He nicely summarized the cardiac aspects, and very well supported by Jackson Pal, who have been into these very supportive role for Delhi Medical Association and the profession. So it's been a very good, educative and informative session. And I thank you all for sparing time this afternoon. My audience, they are the biggest support for this academic activity, and we'll be continuing with different editions every Saturday afternoon. I'm sure now DMA is at a stage where we are getting telephone calls 2 days before that कि Saturday का क्या link है और क्या topic है. So that speaks about the interest this DMA academic activity has generated, and I'm thankful to the esteemed faculty that they have performed so well that it has definitely enhanced prestige of our program and of Delhi Medical Association. Thank you all, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I assure Dr. Sharda Jain and Surbhi, we will definitely take up the quality of pads issue. And with all of you already there. Yes, Dr. Mittal, please. Yes, Dr.
Yeah, very informative, very interesting panel. We did learn a lot from other experts, especially oncologists, cardiologists. But I have an opinion regarding vaccine during pregnancy. Foxy is advocating, Dr. Jain, Meenakshi also asked you, DMA should advocate. What I have been telling, vaccine trials in pregnancy have been done only with Pfizer or Moderna. We had no trial with Covishield or Covaxin. In fact, Royal College has come out that Covishield should not be given to people below 40 because of blood clot risks. So I think we can keep that also aside. But Covaxin is our own indigenous product. What I've been suggesting is, initially we were saying don't even vaccinate somebody who is undergoing fertility treatment, IUI, IVF or anything, don't vaccinate. But nowadays we are not stopping them from getting vaccination. They can get vaccinated, go ahead with IVF. We are not even advocating termination if somebody has been vaccinated and later she realizes that she was pregnant. We allow them to continue. We do get several requests daily, at least 3 or 4 women will tell me, ma'am, can I take the vaccine? I said, no, because so far government doesn't permit. You are pregnant, please don't take. But my urge is we should plan a short trial with Covaxin. Of course, theoretically it will be safe because it is a dead virus. But we just need a safety trial in pregnant women before we say, yes, we are doing it, so that there is no litigation. And this kind of a research trial can be conducted at a very short space. Inject n number in first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and within 3 to 6 months, you will have a safety data and you will be on a stronger footing to recommend it because you will have evidence there. We can't go with the evidence of messenger RNA vaccines like Pfizer, and we should have our own before we permit vaccination in pregnancy in India, unless we are getting Pfizer available or something. So that is what my request is. Many people are advocating, but I still feel we need evidence for Covaxin safety.
Madam, I want to tell that we have written to the government is not giving the data on the Covaxin. The Covaxin people are not sharing the data, and they are having international backlash also. So I think we must pressurize the government to share the data first. You are right. As HIV data has been shared by the Pfizer, that the 100 subject matter during the trial were HIV positive, but the Covaxin people, because of some reasons, and that is the irony this time which we wanted. And you are right, it has to be done in India because 26 million deliveries every year. We cannot ignore pregnant women.
But we should have, at least they should give us the data of women who were pregnant and were accidentally vaccinated. Because nowadays we are not telling them to terminate pregnancy. Even that information we should collate together, have all the data, and also conduct at the same time a short trial. You need not even have a large number, but do and establish safety in every trimester of pregnancy before you give a recommendation.
Can I request you, Dr. Shada Jain has left. There's a question, ma'am, Dr. Sunita Mittal, if you can answer. Dr. Ansra Baweja, if a patient has not taken HRT post-menopausal and even after 15 years of radical hysterectomy, now after 15 years, she's complaining a lot of heat intolerance and irritable. Can she now take HRT?
We need to investigate. Is there any other reason for this? Why the symptoms are coming up? Or maybe she only had a simple hysterectomy and ovaries are left behind and now the ovarian function is declining. So we can see her baseline estradiol level. If the baseline estradiol level is below 20, yes, HRT will help her. But if it is not, then maybe there is some other reason for heat intolerance. Investigate her thyroid, investigate other things also. But yes, if still we find this is the only reason that she has hypoestrogenemia giving rise to symptoms, she can be given therapeutic HRT. No problem.
Baweja has got his answer. So thank you very much. And once again, on behalf of all the office bearers of DMA and the members of DMA, I thank the faculty to be joining us here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes.
Also on behalf of Jackson Pal.
Yes, Deepika, surely.
So Jackson Pal brings to you Doxipal DRL capsules. Strike against the pathogens with Doxipal DRL. Lycorate soft gels provide the required defense to boost the immunity. Also, we have sugar-free Lycorate sachet in orange flavor containing L-arginine, lycopene, and DHA to prevent pregnancy complications. And our newly launched Nari Cal tablets of calcium citrate malate with vitamin D3 and folic acid. My teammates, Dr. Vipin Tyagi and Mr. Amit Saxena, join me to thank the respected faculty and all attendees present with us today. Do join us again next Saturday for the next in this series of academic programs of DMA. Webinar ID remains the same. There is on Thursday another interesting topic, urinary pregnancy test positive. What next? So please note down the Zoom ID for that also. Do join in. Thank you. And
thank you, Deepika. Thank you very much. Thank you.